Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. A stunning new study by researchers at Harvard has revealed the death toll from Hurricane Maria may be 70 times higher than the official count. The official death toll stands at 64, but the new study estimates the death toll of at least 4,645, with some projections topping 5,700. Researchers counted not just deaths directly from storm injuries such as falling debris, but also those who died due to storm-related delays in medical treatment for injuries, infections, and chronic illness. The findings contrast with President Trump's boasts in the wake of the hurricane that Puerto Rico suffered a low death count. We'll have more on the deaths from Hurricane Maria after headlines. In the Gaza Strip, Israeli warplanes launched scores of airstrikes overnight Tuesday, while Hamas fired dozens of rockets and mortars into southern Israel in the most intense fighting in the besieged Palestinian territory since 2014. A tentative ceasefire appears to have taken hold after Hamas said it had agreed to a truce with Israel. The fighting followed a recent wave of nonviolent protests near Israel's militarized border with Gaza, in which Israeli snipers killed 116 Palestinians and injured thousands more. Meanwhile, Israel's Navy intercepted a flotilla carrying about 24 people, activists challenging Israel's naval blockade of the Gaza Strip, as well as patients seeking medical treatment abroad. The protests came as Israel's constructing a fortified maritime barrier. This is flotilla participant Mohammed Abu Eda.
We demand to break the blockade. I hope to seek medical treatment in other Arabic countries because of my injury. The attempt to sail today aims to help us break the blockade.
In the United States, hundreds of people were arrested in cities across the country Tuesday in nonviolent protests calling for an end to economic inequality, militarism, and racial injustice, organized by the new Poor People's Campaign. In Missouri, dozens of people held a sit-in protest at the state capitol building calling for a minimum wage of $15 an hour. In Nashville, Tennessee, 20 people were arrested as they protested for gun control and against militarism ahead of a visit by President Trump. In Washington, D.C., dozens of protesters were arrested as they held a civil disobedience protest outside the office of Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. The New York Times reports days after Attorney General Jeff Sessions recused himself from the investigation into alleged ties between Russia and the Trump campaign, President Trump ordered Sessions to reverse his decision. The Times reports the potentially inappropriate request made in March of 2017 is under investigation by special counsel Robert Mueller as another line of evidence that Trump sought to obstruct the inquiry. Sessions recused himself following reports he met twice with Russia's ambassador to the U.S. while serving as a campaign surrogate for Donald Trump. The revelation directly contradicted Sessions' sworn testimony to Congress that he didn't meet with any Russian officials in the run-up to the 2016 election. A top House Republican has defended the FBI against a series of attacks by President Trump, who's claimed without evidence the Bureau planted a spy in his 2016 presidential campaign. Congressman Trey Gowdy, chair of the powerful House Oversight Committee, said Tuesday the FBI was acting properly when it deployed a confidential informant to investigate Russian attempts to interfere in the elections. Missouri Republican Governor Eric Greitens said Tuesday he's resigning from office as lawmakers prepared for his possible impeachment over alleged sexual misconduct and corruption. Greitens continued to profess his innocence, even as he said he's stepping down.
I know, and people of good faith know, that I am not perfect. But I have not broken any laws nor committed any offense worthy of this treatment. I will let the fairness of this process be judged by history.
An indictment accuses Greitens of blindfolding and tying up a woman with whom he was having a consensual affair, then taking her picture without her consent and threatening to release the naked photograph if she ever spoke publicly about their relationship. In a separate trial, Governor Greitens faces a felony charge of computer tampering for illegally obtaining a donors list from a veterans charity he co-founded to aid his election campaign. ABC has canceled its hit show Roseanne after its star, Roseanne Barr, fired off a series of racist comments on Twitter. In one tweet, Roseanne wrote, quote, "Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes had a baby equals VJ." It was a reference to Valerie Jarrett, longtime advisor to President Obama, who's African-American and born in Iran. Roseanne also accused billionaire George Soros, who's Jewish, of being a Nazi collaborator, and attacked Chelsea Clinton. The decision to cancel Roseanne was made by Channing Dungey, the first African-American president of a major TV network. The reboot of the hit 1980 sitcom Roseanne last year drew huge audiences and praise from President Trump, who once called Roseanne Barr to congratulate her on the show's success. The Supreme Court has declined to hear a challenge to an Arkansas law that's among the most restrictive anti-choice measures in the country. The law requires women's health clinics that provide medication-induced abortions to contract with doctors who have hospital admitting privileges. Planned Parenthood says the restriction is almost impossible to meet and that it'll be forced to stop providing abortion medication at its 2 Arkansas clinics, leaving just a single clinic in Little Rock as Arkansas's lone provider of medication abortions. In France, police have begun evacuating hundreds of migrants from makeshift camps around Paris, forcing them onto buses bound for so-called temporary accommodation centers. The sweep came as France added new restrictions for migrants applying for asylum. Meanwhile, a 22-year-old migrant from Mali named Mamadou Gassama became a national hero this week after he risked his life to scale the side of an apartment high-rise in order to rescue a 4-year-old boy who was dangling from a 4th-floor balcony. Video of the rescue went viral, earning Gassama the nickname Spider-Man. He was welcomed at Élysée Palace by President Macron on Monday, offered French citizenship and a job as a firefighter. Hungary's government has proposed new laws and a constitutional amendment that would crack down on anyone offering aid to migrants seeking asylum. Under the legislation, offering food, water, or legal advice to migrants would be outlawed. Even printing leaflets with information for asylum seekers would become a criminal offense. In Ukraine, a prominent Russian journalist and Kremlin critic was ambushed outside his home in Kiev Tuesday in an apparent assassination. Arkady Babchenko, a veteran war correspondent who is sharply critical of Russian President Vladimir Putin's annexation of Crimea, was shot 3 times in the back by an unknown assailant. Babchenko had been living in Ukraine since 2017 after calling Russia a country I no longer feel safe in, he said. The Justice Department's approved a takeover of the U.S. agribusiness giant Monsanto by the German pharmaceutical firm Bayer. The planned $66 billion takeover would make the combined company the largest supplier of seeds and agricultural chemicals in the world. The Canadian government has announced plans to buy the Trans Mountain Pipeline, guaranteeing its expansion will move forward despite widespread concern about its environmental impact. First Nations and environmental activists say the project will expand highly polluting development in Alberta's tar sands region while endangering communities around an expanded export terminal near Vancouver. And a transgender woman who is part of a caravan of Central American migrants who arrived at the U.S. border earlier this month seeking asylum has died in the custody of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. BuzzFeed News reports Roxana Hernandez died Friday after suffering a cardiac arrest at a hospital in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Hernandez was one of scores of asylum seekers who crossed into the United States earlier this month after taking part in a month-long caravan that began more than 2,000 miles away in the Mexican state of Chiapas. Hernandez's supporters say she was detained by U.S. Customs and Border Protection after asking for asylum at the border. She was reportedly held in a freezing cell with the lights turned on 24 hours a day and denied adequate food or medical care. Last month, Hernandez told BuzzFeed News she fled Honduras after facing discrimination and violence. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.